Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 9th Mindset Lecture sponsored by the Center for Psychedelic Psychotherapy and Trauma Research at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. And I'm Rachel Yehuda. And it is my great honor and privilege and pleasure to introduce a really fantastic speaker to you today. And this is Dr. Adam Gazzaley, who obtained his MD and his PhD in neuroscience here at Mount Sinai. He completed his neurology residency at the University of Pennsylvania and his postdoctoral training in cognitive neuroscience at the University of California in Berkeley. He's currently the David Dolby Distinguished Professor of Neurology, Physiology, and Psychiatry at the University of California in San Francisco. And he's the founder and executive director of Neuroscape, which is getting an awful lot of attention lately. It's a translational neuroscience center at UCSF that is engaged in technology creation and scientific research. Now, Dr. Gazzaley's video game that was designed to improve cognitive control, which was published in Nature, actually led to the first FDA-approved video game therapeutic as a treatment for ADHD in children. Dr. Gazzaley is also the co-founder and chief science advisor of Akili Interactive, which is a company developing therapeutic video games, and Sensing, a company creating the first sensory immersion vessel, and Jazz Venture Partners, a venture capital firm investing in experiential technology to improve human performance. And he is also a writer and a nature photographer. So it is really tremendous for us that you've taken time to be with us today. Dr. Gazzaley's new Neuroscape Psychedelic Division at the UCSF plans to take a multimodal personalized approach to studying the set and setting of psychedelic treatment to optimize and personalize delivery. And it's something that we have really been spending a lot of time thinking about how to study. So we can't really wait to hear what you have to say. So with that, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. I really wish we could be together in person. I miss Mount Sinai. I miss New York City. I miss traveling, as we all do. And but it's really an honor and a privilege to present to you, because I think that we have much in common in how we think about mental health and translational tools. And hopefully this could be the beginning of collaborative work together. The talk I'm going to give today is really high level. It doesn't go super deep into any of the things that I present, but we could use the Q&A for that. I just really have a lot of ground I want to cover, as you will see. And also, I don't want you to think this talk is burying the lead. Yes, we have interest in psychedelics, and I'm going to discuss that at the end. But I really wanted to frame our interest in psychedelics from the perspective of what Neuroscape does and why we think we can make a unique contribution in the psychedelic field. And I think that'll also have more potential to set up collaborative relationships between our groups. So we just had some technical difficulties. For the first time ever, my keynote did open, but fortunately I recorded a copy pretty much of this identical talk for one that I gave last week. So I'm going to play that video. Hopefully that works. It's around 33 minutes, and then I'll come back and we can do a live Q&A and talk about anything of interest there. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
I want to start this talk from a high-level perspective, and that is one of the most important global challenges that we face today, I would say, is the enhancement of human cognition. And that's because crisis, meaning that when it comes to both understanding and enhancing our cognition, and I'm broadly defining that to include our attention, perception, memory, reasoning and decision-making, creativity, imagination, emotional regulation, empathy, and compassion, we're tragically lacking, and we're paying a great price for that. 500 million people around the world are suffering debilitating effects of anxiety and depression and attention and memory deficits. And this burden is rising, notably dementia in our seniors and attention and emotional control deficits in our youth. And I'd say it's becoming clear that the COVID-19 pandemic has aggravated these challenges. Also, I'd like to note that this crisis extends beyond medicine to include individuals without clearly defined clinical conditions. I would say that our deficits in long term thinking, critical decision making, and empathic concern are in clear display right now for all of us to see. And I would take it a step further and propose that this goal of enhancing cognition should be positioned as a grand challenge and placed on par with other pressing global priorities. Because if we can't focus our attention in a more sustained manner and make creative, wise, and future-oriented decisions that prioritize others over ourselves, we'll never effectively address complex time-delayed crises like climate change, no matter how much information we acquire. So we need to create innovative solutions to enhance our cognition. And I'd like to propose that a solution exists already through one of the most core aspects of being human, and that is experience. For thousands of years, we humans have been creating and ritualizing experience to enhance the quality of our lives. Music, dance, art, stories, sports, games. Interestingly, while striving to entertain and connect, we unleashed the power of experience to enrich the human mind in countless ways. We've also intentionally designed experiences to support our mental health. Notably, a central tenet of the ancient and widespread practices of meditation is release of suffering from unhealthy states, stress, fear, grief, craving, and clinging. However, despite this rich history that we have with experience and mental health, today the dominant paradigm is that there is a magic pill to cure our ailing minds. We just need to find it, but we will find it. The problem with this is that this paradigm has just not served us well. While clearly many individuals have been helped, death and suffering from cancer, heart disease, and infectious disease has declined, while the reverse trend has occurred for afflictions of the mind, anxiety, depression, suicide, dementia. So I want to ask the question, how did we wind up here with this pill as the paradigm? And how can we see beyond its walls to new approaches to medicine? I would say that this story begins with what I'm going to describe as a tale of two discoveries. So if we wind back the clock, just a century ago, neuroscientists maintained two views of the brain that turned out to be largely false. One is that brain function relies solely on electrical signaling, and the other is that the brain's function and structure are fixed and hardwired after development. But as I'm sure most of you are aware, seminal discoveries starting 100 years ago brought to life two new fields of neuroscience. Neurochemistry, showing that signaling between neurons is largely mediated by chemicals, and neuroplasticity, showing that the brain is constantly remodeling itself throughout our lives in response to experience. And that this change occurs in our brains all the time at every level, from its structure, its chemistry, to its function. And the relationship is so strong that even witnessing a single tragic event can detrimentally impact the function of your brain for the rest of your life. This is known as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Over the last 70 years, these fields have grown to dominate neuroscience, both to an equal degree. However, despite the balanced credibility in science, their translation into medicine for the mind has been polarized. Molecular medicine, delivered via the pill, has become the mainstream, and what I refer to as experiential medicine, delivered as a session, has become marginalized as the alternative. In considering how pills for the mind became the paradigm, it's important to recognize the powerful assets that pills have going for them. Their success rode on the triumph of pills in other areas of medicine, notably infectious disease. So if we can treat pneumonia with a pill, then why not depression? And thus it fits nicely into the model of what medicine is expected to be. It's also so convenient. An easy fix that takes just seconds a day while we brush our teeth appeals to the lazier side of our nature. Also, pills can be readily formulated, distributed, and blinded, making them easily accessible, reproducible, and also testable in randomized controlled trials. It's important to note that these assets of pills are the very same deficits of the session in experiential medicine. It does not fit into this model of dose it or cut it. It is inconvenient to get better with this approach, lots of work, and its reliance on highly trained human experts challenges its accessibility, its reproducibility, and its testability. And so this is where we find ourselves with this paradigm. However, I would say things have begun to shift dramatically just over the last decade, while challenges to this paradigm and this system became impossible to ignore. The first is that despite 70 years of trying to generate targeted molecules to neural networks, which are the underlying computational unit of the brain, we have not succeeded. Thus, we have to increase the doses of our molecular medicines to very high levels, leading to just as many side effects as we see effects. These very challenges in targeting and safety then influence the cost of research that drive up the price of these treatments. And molecules have proven notoriously difficult to personalize, monitor remotely, and also adjust in a rapid way. For decades, this global institution of pharmaceutical industry has tried to flip all of these cards, and essentially we have failed. And this has resulted in a dramatic reduction in research funding and even the complete withdrawal of several major pharmaceutical companies from this area of molecular medicine for the brain and the mind. I would say that we need to achieve all of these objectives in our medicine. And I believe that this is obtainable via a modern reformulation of the ancient approaches that I have talked about to using experience to enhance the function of our minds. What I think now of as technology-enabled experiential medicine. Now, I just want to pause here for a moment and acknowledge that information technology has challenged us in fundamental ways, from distraction to depression, privacy, misinformation. I actually wrote an entire book on this subject called The Distracted Mind, Ancient Brains in a High-Tech World. I'm not going to talk about this at all today, but it is important to ground a discussion about the promise of technology for the brain with the reality that technology has also challenged us in a very fundamental way. But I feel that we're poised at the threshold of a critical stage in the development of technology. It is due time for us to use technology to elevate us as humans and not diminish us. And I believe that this can be accomplished via the ability of modern technology to create a very unique and powerful type of experience, what I refer to as the closed loop experience. This is one in which the environment that an individual is exposed to is adapted in real time based upon their state in the moment. So let's break this down a bit. So here you are, this is your brain, and you're engaged in a digitally delivered closed loop experience. So what's happening is that while you interact with this digital environment, detailed aspects of your state in the moment are being recorded in real time. So stress, your emotions, your performance data. This could occur through capture by physiology, body movements, facial expressions, and even brain activity via sensors that you may be wearing or are positioned on your devices. This data is then used to adaptively adjust the environment that you're being exposed to, the sensations, the challenges, and rewards. This thus makes a personalized environment that can be presented to you on a phone or a tablet or in more immersive real-world simulations like virtual reality or augmented reality. It also gives us the opportunity here to enhance this complex, essentially, data cycle by applying advances in machine learning. And as I like to say, I can imagine no better use of AI than to enhance HI, human intelligence. So just let's note here that it's the nature of the interaction that activates brain networks selectively. And that is something that we've never accomplished before with a molecule alone. And it is the adaptive aspects of this closed loop experience that applies continuous pressure to these neural networks, thus harnessing our brain's inherent plasticity to optimize its function over time. I like to think of this as like the ultimate personal trainer, informed by all available data to adaptively adjust the nature of the experience at every moment to optimize performance. I feel confident that closed loop experiences are going to have the potential to achieve all of these objectives. So leveraging accessible, convenient, and inexpensive mobile technology to deliver targeted, personalized, and reproducible treatments that are easily monitored, adjusted, and tested. While all this sounds great and promising, in order to shift expectations, we actually need to build these tools and validate them. And that's what I want to share with you now in a deeper dive. I'll just let that serve as an introduction and really go into my now more than decade-long journey to accomplish this goal of creating these tools and taking them through the validation process. So, this began years ago, over a decade, as you can see here, in my lab at University of California in San Francisco. And to be honest with you, I think it was a bit disorienting for my colleagues in 2008 when, after my now 20 years of experience in neuroscience, I developed my first closed-loop video game that we called Neuroracer with friends of mine from LucasArts, a big video game company at the time. Now, this game is based on my lab's cognitive neuroscience research, and I specifically designed it to improve attention abilities. So in brief, the game works by challenging and rewarding a player to engage in two tasks at the same time at the very edge of their ability while ignoring constant distractions. So it's a very high level interference resolution task, a cognitive control task of the highest order. And the hypothesis was that by challenging these abilities, largely prefrontal cortical mediated functions, you would see an improvement in gameplay itself, but also a transfer of benefit across the different domains of cognitive control. I just want to pause and comment on why I chose to deliver a closed loop experience as a video game, right? It doesn't have to be a video game. I think that games are a special type of experience. And I felt and still do that the fun and immersive nature of play itself leads to deeper engagement both in the moment as well as better adherence to a treatment over time. And this in turn would lead to better outcomes. 5 years after the development of this game, we published the results of a series of studies as the cover story of Nature. I don't have to tell you, this is a very exciting moment in a researcher's life when all this work culminates in a publication like this. And what we showed here was that the older adults, healthy older adults who were engaged in this study and performed this video game, not only got better at the game, as was a reasonable hypothesis, but we also showed that we improved their sustained attention abilities and their working memory compared to two different control groups. We also showed that some of these improved abilities were retained 6 months later. Now we've shown that to even be true, amazingly, 6 years later, and that brain recordings through high-density EEG during gameplay helped inform our understanding of the mechanism of action, involving networks between the prefrontal cortex and posterior regions of the brain. That were associated with these effects and their endurance over time. I'm not going to dive into any more details from that study back in the day, but I'm happy to talk about it if you wish afterwards. This success led my lab at the time to evolve into a new research center at UCSF called Neuroscape. And over the years, we've built new types of laboratories that you can see here, which were really designed to integrate interactive media, the most cutting-edge media that we would be able to either create or license with neuroscience methodology. Over the many years, we've created more of these closed-loop video games to enhance different aspects of brain function and advance these technologies as experiential medicine. You could see an array of them on this slide that we've been working on. And in general, it takes us 2 years to build each of these games. And they capture different aspects of a player's real-time state and generate personalized interactive experiences. And you could see they vary in terms of how they're delivered on tablets or in virtual reality, and all different modes of interaction we have worked on with these different closed-loop games. After we developed them, we advanced these technologies into carefully controlled research trials, real double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trials. It's taken us just as long to develop the game as to refine our experimental methodology, and these studies usually take on average of 2 to 3 years to complete. You could see some of our outcome measures listed here. Not all studies have all of them, but some have most of them. Essentially, anything that we hypothesize might change in response to these experiential treatments, we record in our Neuroscape labs before and after gameplay, including some of these metrics during gameplay itself. Just to give you a little update on what's been going on recently, for example, in one of our studies, MetaTrain, we've now completed 3 randomized controlled trials with MetaTrain. MetaTrain's a game that integrates the principles of concentrative meditation, attention to the breath, with our digital closed loop designs of adaptive reward and challenge. And what we've shown is converging evidence across 3 populations: young adults, adolescents with adverse life events in the middle panel, and older adults, that that 6 weeks of engagement with MetaTrain that's played on an iPad at home leads to improvements in sustained attention. In some cases, we've shown that true for working memory. So we're very excited about these data. You could see they've been published in 3 papers just over the last couple of years. We now have a study in older adults that's in preparation. We're really excited about this. We have not shared this data yet, but I can tell you that we're seeing a transfer of benefits beyond sustained attention to metrics of stress regulation, including even lengthening of telomeres, which we're just blown away by and really excited, and that paper's in preparation now. 3 other games have now also completed randomized controlled trials. These are all closed-loop video games: Body Brain Trainer, what we call BBT, Rhythmicity, and Labyrinth. And all these studies were done in healthy older adults. So all these papers on preparation. Actually, Labyrinth was just published a couple weeks ago in Scientific Reports. Just to briefly take you through what these are: Body Brain Trainer, when you play it, you're engaged in both a physical and cognitive challenge with complex closed loop systems, even up to 5 of them simultaneously, with the hypothesis that you will have enhanced cognitive outcomes if you are physically embodied in the training, and as well as getting the physical exercise. In Rhythmicity, you see here and physically interact, as even tactile stimulation, with stimuli that are adaptively adjusting the challenges to your rhythmic abilities based upon real-time measures of accuracy, precision, and consistency. The hypothesis here is that anticipation and timing is a key aspect of all brain function, and so we expect to see transfer across many domains. We think this is the basis of why music therapy has benefit. And in Labyrinth, you navigate and learn locations in 3D landscapes that's adaptively adjusting the challenges based upon how well you navigate these spatial environments. And in the paper that we just published that you can read, we show that this transfers benefits to real high fidelity memory improvement and very, very different types of memory tests in older adults. So super excited about that, and now advancing that work to mild cognitive impairment and early dementia. At Neuroscape, it's not just therapeutics that we work on. We're also really excited about using closed loop systems to create new tests of cognitive ability. This is something that we've been working on for many years, called ACE, Adaptive Cognitive Evaluation, in which we rapidly sample dozens of different aspects of cognitive control using staircase algorithms. We've just completed a study of 1,200 children showing how sustained attention abilities map on to standard academic performance metrics like reading and math. There's probably going to be at least 6 papers that come out of this study. And the goal is to not just move these tools, as I said, in terms of experiential medicine and treatments, but also have a better understanding about these cognitive abilities and how they change throughout development and with aging. So in parallel with the technologies I just showed you, we spend a lot of time on technologies such as this, the glass brain, to more comprehensively both record and visualize real-time state of an individual while they're engaged in an experience. And here you're looking at my glass brain. This is a combination of structural MRI and EEG, and it's showing real-time neural activity as I'm playing one of our games. So a host of rapid signal processing approaches engaged in here, including multivariate Granger causality and rapid artifact correction. So we're very excited about this, and it's really part of a larger program that we call our multimodal biosensing program, where the goal is to integrate real-time signals from numerous recording modalities, interpret them, and then make them immediately actionable in closed-loop systems. So this will include both neural activity, as you see here, but also heart rate, respiratory rate, electrodermal activity, facial expressions, eye movements, anything that we can record, we will. And we're very excited about that program. It's I think your group will appreciate this. It's one that's really demands a multidisciplinary team of experts, both in neuroscience and psychology and the clinical sciences, but also biosensor engineering, signal processing, and machine learning. And as an example of what we're doing with multimodal biosensing, we're using it to study how real-time neural and physiological data can be fed directly into closed-loop experiences in video games or adaptive tasks, with the hypothesis that it will increase the precision of their targeting and the robustness of the outcomes. We are applying this to a new approach to neurofeedback we call a cognitive brain-computer interface. We have a paper that's in revision right now showing its potential to enhance outcomes. We also have several published papers with non-invasive electrical brain stimulation, largely transcranial alternating current stimulation, although we do have one with direct currents as well. And the goal here is to advance our ability to use real-time data, not just across neural recordings, but across the full scope of tools that we have, to guide non-invasive brain stimulation parameters to more effectively drive plasticity. So hopefully that gives you a nice overview of what we're working on at Neuroscape. But I would like to say, like, this, despite these academic successes and how much fun it is to really integrate technology and neuroscience, it became clear to me a while ago that in order to advance these breakthroughs beyond the lab, and get them into the world as treatments to actually help people, we need to move these technologies out of the university. And to accomplish this, I co-founded my first company, Achille Interactive, where we've developed a really, truly amazing closed-loop video game called EndeavorRx. You can see a little video of it here. This game is based on the exact same underlying closed-loop design as Neuroracer, but a much higher level of art, music, story, challenges, reward, usability, everything just ramped up to a much higher level with a team of video game professionals we've been working with for almost a decade now. And the goal over the years, besides the game development that I just showed you, is Achille has supported dozens of research trials in diverse clinical populations to advance the game as a medical treatment for populations that have deficits in attention, which are all those that you see on your screen right now. I notably want to refer to the recently published pivotal trial in ADHD. This was really a first of its kind, even from a methodological point of view. It was a prospectively designed, multi-site, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial in 350 kids, 8 to 12-year-olds with ADHD. And this study was led by Scott Collins out of Duke University. Actually, was not even an investigator on this study, which is sort of the hope, is that other of our colleagues will go on and further validate technologies that we create. And what this shows is that 1 month of Endeavor RX, which is the name of the latest game, improved attention abilities, the sustained attention, as well as some metrics of real world functioning in these children with ADHD. And coupled now with multiple other publications, we have replicated and extended the same findings that we reported in Nature, validating this game as an effective and safe tool to improve sustained attention abilities in diverse populations. And this really sets up the next stage of the journey. How do we, with all of this data, now get this treatment into the hands of thousands and then millions of people who are suffering attention deficits? And as you've heard, I'm really delighted to announce that after a decade of effort, this game is now the first cleared digital treatment for children. And the specific indication is inattention in children diagnosed with ADHD. But it also makes it the first FDA cleared video game for any medical condition. Doctors can now, for the first time, write a digital prescription for a video game. And I think this is like the real true launching pad into this new era of experiential medicine. The experiential treatments that I've been describing demand really active engagement, and they're exhausting. And several years ago, I began to ask myself how we might use technology to create more passive experiences that can be used not just to enhance our cognitive abilities, but to restore our minds from fatigue. And I've always been a major advocate of time spent in nature, in real nature. I'm a nature photographer as a side job. But there's also an emerging scientific literature showing that the benefits of nature have extend across many areas, including stress, mood, and recovery from cognitive fatigue. So could nature experiences be digitally delivered and still have those effects? And as you could see in this video, I began exploring the potential of creating nature experiences in virtual reality. But I soon realized that the current virtual reality technologies were missing something fundamental that I think is going to be key to have these benefits. And that is sensory synchronization of incoming signals across all of our senses. Neuroscience research has revealed that it's this simultaneous stimulation of multiple senses that leads to the neurophysiological process of multisensory integration. And this in turn generates the unity effect that results in our perception of reality. This is the neural basis for how we perceive constructs such as places, people, and objects. And unfortunately, I could not identify an existing technology to create such experiences that really synchronize across all senses. And so I co-founded a new company called SenSync, which stands for Sensory Synchronization, and built this device that you see here that I call a sensory immersion vessel. You could think of it as the opposite of a sensory deprivation tank. And I really don't like calling it a pod. It looks like a pod. I think of it as a vessel, a vehicle for your mind. It now lives at a Four Seasons in Hawaii, where it was being used as a relaxation, restoration treatment, what I call a deep brain massage. But unfortunately, all that's on hold right now, as you can imagine, because of COVID. A little bit more details here. So in the vessel, you see, hear, smell, and feel tightly synchronized nature stimuli. So this is all built around nature experiences that can be guided in real time by physiological recordings to create a really truly unique and powerful closed loop experience. And you can see here that even within a domain like the tactile domain, it's across multiple modalities: temperature, wind, vibroacoustics, so full proprioceptive inputs through body movements and motion. I hypothesize that it's this level of multisensory immersion that will allow us, to displace from the burdens of our mind, unlocking new approaches across the domains of relaxation, restoration, meditation, and even transformation. So I'm interested in how we can integrate hardware advancements like a sensory immersion vessel with closed loop video games that I've been talking about to yield more robust improvements in cognition than is possible to achieve with a phone or a tablet. I believe that it's this combination that's going to result in the ultimate experiential medicine delivery approach. But this work remains to be done. This is still a hypothesis. So this is where we are now in 2021 at Neuroscape and in these companies that I've started in other groups around the world, is developing and studying innovative software and hardware solutions to build the basis of a new field of experiential medicine. But I want to transition here a little bit and feel that we should recognize that there's a unique opportunity to study how experiential medicine can be integrated with molecular medicine, sort of going back to where we began this talk. I hypothesize that when combined with closed loop experiences, we can lower the doses of drugs to minimize side effects while achieving greater benefits, perhaps beyond what can be accomplished with either approach in isolation. Now, one molecular approach that I feel is particularly well suited for this integration are those that fall into a category of psychedelic compounds. After decades of suppression of scientific inquiry, there's now convincing clinical evidence of efficacy and safety of compounds like psilocybin for mushrooms to treat individuals with a broad range of mental health conditions: depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction. But what fascinates me most is that if you talk to experts in the field, and I have not done research on these compounds, there's really a consensus that the major influence on clinical outcome, even whether it's positive or negative, are the contextual elements of the patient's experience before, during, and after a psychedelic treatment. This is known in the field as set, setting, and integration. So I now appreciate, based upon this, that these treatments are most appropriately thought of as molecularly initiated but experientially delivered medicine. I mean, they're essentially another form of experiential medicine. And this creates a timely opportunity to bring these approaches together as one. And thus, we're just publicly announcing this now in a very short while, the basis of a new division at Neuroscape to advance psychedelic research integrated with technology. And specifically, we'll focus on recording real-time state with multimodal biosensing using during psychedelic treatment. So looking at reflections of stress, emotion, arousal, and attention, possibly even awareness if it's accessible to us, and modifying the treatment environment with multisensory stimulus presentation to understand how we can most effectively and safely guide these experiences through sight, sound, smell, and touch. Eventually, once we understand this, the goal is to integrate them together to create the first ever closed loop psychedelic treatments, enabling us to deliver personalized and precise treatments to a broad range of populations. So just imagine the possibilities in our future to create new types of therapeutic sessions with this integrated approach across all of these tools. So instead of creating silos around each of them, really looking at multimodal treatments. So I want to just conclude here and say that I truly believe that we can do better and that we need to do better. The opportunity and the needs before us are very high right now. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention today. Hopefully you found this interesting, and I'm happy to engage with you in any questions that you may have. So thank you very much.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. I think I'm going to turn this over now to Dr. Lauren Lipau for the Q&A. I have a lot of questions. I'm sure that the audience does too. But I want to really thank you. I have been feeling very similarly that we need a science for setting, and integration. Thank you for showing that that can actually be accomplished using technology and combining technology with all the other things that we know in molecular medicine. So it's going to be very, very exciting. And yeah, I'm very, very interested to see where this goes next. But I'm going to turn it over now to Lauren and see what we have from the audience.
Thank you. Yeah, so we encourage questions in the Q&A box. But as we're waiting for this to come in, I have a question too. As a trainee in an academic center, I'm intrigued how you've managed to successfully navigate industry and academia in what seems like a productive and ethical way. Do you have any words of wisdom for like early career prospective innovators who are starting to think about some of these complexities?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. One that I talk about a lot because I've somehow managed to keep a full-time academic appointment, which I have. I'm a full-time professor at UCSF, and also engage in multiple industry-related activities. First, I just want to thank everyone for engaging today in this, and I hope you found it interesting. And whatever we don't have time to cover today, I'm happy if you send me an email and follow up. That would be fine by me. It was sort of an out-of-body experience to watch myself give a talk without moving my mouth. So hopefully we'll get to meet in real life soon and engage in a real interactive Q&A. To answer your question, I never had any business training or training in intellectual property or fund rate, any of these things. I did an MD PhD at Mount Sinai and was sort of just thrust into it by this desire to see the work that I was doing leave the laboratory and get into people's lives. There's just no other way to do that than through engagement with industry. And so for me, it was just a baby step process over the last decade of learning how to form companies, how to work with industry in a transparent and ethical way, how to file patents on work that don't conflict with publications. It is complicated. It is a never-ending struggle for me to balance them. I'd say at the very core of it, it's always being transparent and being clear about what you're doing and not hiding things, which I think leads to most of the problems. So that's something that I strive for every day, is disclosing, as you heard in this talk, like I disclose everything. And other than that, I would say the last thing that I would say on this is that maybe when I started this 12 years ago, it seemed more strange for a university professor to be doing all of this work in industry while still engaging in academics, but that is changing rapidly. I think there's a growing appetite for academics to also figure out how to bridge over with industry. And so, for the right person that wants to juggle something like this, there is, that possible pathway.
Thank you, that's helpful. Hope, would you like to, I'm not sure who's up next, actually.
I think we have Dr. Schiller joining us on the panel right now. If not, I can always jump in with a question. Here we go.
Hi. Hey, thank you. It's super interesting. I was wondering, how do you approach the selection of the tasks? And also, how do you know or explore which measures you want to enhance in the task and also neurally?
Yeah, it's a great question, and more than we could cover right now, because it's sort of one of those that the devil's in the details. So it depends on the goals of that particular treatment or project, however you want to think about it. So what we don't really build things for clinical conditions. So we don't think about Alzheimer's disease or ADHD or PTSD. We think about the cognitive systems that are fundamental to performance across a wide range of activities. So most of our interventions are somewhere in the cognitive control domain, like attention-directed systems. And so we start with really a cognitive neuroscience approach to think, what are the tasks that exist in the literature that activate these networks selectively? And then no one wants to do a cognitive task for hours and hours and hours. As a matter of fact, I think that's one of the reasons why you see such poor transfer with things like brain training, where you basically have someone do it, a pretty boring task for months. Like even if you're being paid, you might be doing it, but you're not doing it deeply and engaged in a way that can lead to change. So once we start with what do we want to target, let's say internal attention, which led to our whole MetaTrain program. Then we think about, okay, what are the real world activities and interactions that have been successful in some way before? And so we looked at the field of concentrative meditation. And then it's a process of how do we take those principles, integrate them with a closed loop design so that you have adaptivity of feedback and challenge, and then how do you make it fun? And this is a really complicated multidisciplinary activity that involves a team of people with all sorts of skill sets, including artists and musicians. We work with storytellers. I mean, this is a real challenge, and usually takes us years to do. In terms of outcomes, we have like a layered approach. So there is just showing that they get better at what they're doing, right? Most things do, right? There's just practice effects. And then we're like, what is the closest level of transfer to this that was not this game, but is better, right? So that's meaningful, right? It's not like, big celebration, because it's not really going to lead to really enduring and meaningful change in that person's life, maybe, but it is a step in that direction. And then we have outcome measures that go much, much, much further. Right now, we're trying to take that most dramatic and important step of looking at real world changes, which is very hard, right? Because there's not really quantitative metrics like you have in laboratory-based tests. So in order to do that, you need much larger numbers. In order to accomplish that, we now have another program I didn't talk about here called Nexus, which is a platform we've been developing for 5 years to be able to do very large, distributed, essentially remote randomized controlled trials with thousands and even millions of people is eventually our goal, where we could start looking at real life transfer. So that's a bit of an answer to that question. It's a complicated one.
I think it would be very interesting to ask Adam the question that we were discussing this morning. If you don't mind, we actually have some neuroimaging protocols that we're working with in connection with our clinical trials. And one of the things that we really do want to do is be able to examine how individuals feel about their own traumatic script before and after psychedelics. Is there a way that you can think of and recommend that we would be able to look naturalistically at how a person organizes their brain response to a trauma without interfering with the process of psychotherapy in the context of a psychedelic clinical trial? Because that would be a very important thing to be able to figure out how to do. And we were, at the end, we decided we couldn't do it, but maybe we should talk to somebody who's clearly not let any of these kind of barriers stop him.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel, that's exactly what we're trying to do. Whether or not you think about it for traumas or experiences of bliss or struggle or whatever the nature of the response to the psychedelic, both during the treatment itself and of course afterwards, we're trying to figure out ways of being able to record that with with high fidelity. It's essentially another way of looking at the whole goal of the set and setting research, right? We want to peer inside this black box, right? It's been a black box for too long. It's amazing how successful we've been considering how much of a black box it is, which just shows you how powerful these treatments are. We think that if we can understand what is going on with the individual during the experience and how those peak events that occur that will be described afterwards as like a mystical experience or a transformative experience or a peak experience, what they really are and how they go on to lead to the more enduring outcomes that actually lead to therapeutic benefit. I mean, that's just not known at all yet. So exactly what you described is our goal. Now, how do we accomplish that is really the challenge. So I didn't mention this. It's funny, this talk, I actually recorded that very recently, but there were like several things that have changed even in the last 3 weeks since I recorded that. So Robin Carrott-Harris, as you may know, is now leaving Imperial and joining us. He's going to be the director of our division. That is now publicly announced. He officially starts with us July 1st, and I think him and his family arrive in the Bay Area mid-August. So really excited about that. If you know Robin and his work, it's really brilliant. And it's a longer story, and I'm happy to tell it at some point of how, you know, the real personal story of how I got interested in psychedelics. And you know, really a lot of it was mediated by reading Michael Pollan's book and then talking to Robin and realizing that this is a field that integrates incredibly well with the type of work that we're doing in digital technology. A lot of people like, I don't see how you get from video games to psychedelics, but hopefully that was clear from the talk. But what I learned, you know, and I went out to Imperial and Oxford and met Robin and gave talks there, pretty much everything I gave to you except the psychedelic component, is that context is critical. And we think that working together, we're going to be able to really move this, you know, needle on this. So to answer your question specifically, how we will start doing this, we just finished writing up our first proposal using psilocybin. I haven't told anyone this yet, but psilocybin in healthy adults. And what we will do is, it's the set and setting study that should have been done, but just hasn't really been done yet, which is fascinating. Understanding, so, you know, the full recordings during the treatment itself, and then several different approaches to experience sampling. And this is sort of answering your question directly. The problem with experience sampling is the two ways of doing it. The one where we just tap on you every once in a while, say, what's going on? What's going on? Is incredibly disruptive to the experience itself. But you know, it's a way that you could get time stamping and get, you know, the appropriate amount of data. So we will do that. And the other is that the participant themselves share when something of impact occurs for them, whether a moment of bliss or a moment of struggle, and figuring out how to do that through vocalizations, squeeze boxes, joysticks is what we're working on right now, so that you make it as low impact to the experience as possible. But the beauty of this, if it works, is that while that subjective transmission of the experience and the state is being recorded, we're recording all of this other neurophysiology and other physiology. So this is the machine learning goal of this, right? Eventually, what we hope is that we understand what the physiological signatures that don't require a response, that tell us the degree of stress, the valence of the stress, is it positive and negative, the degree of arousal, is attention being directed internally or is it externally to like the music? Once we understand all of those signatures that don't require the participant to actually tell us, we will have a way of following the journey without requiring an interruption. That is the goal. And then when we can do that, we could look at how those measures then translate to the outcome. So that's essentially what the study is.
It's fabulous. I'm going to yield to other questions. We have now several, but can't wait to talk further about this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
We have a question from Dr. Curtis.
Oh, hi, Adam. Great talk. Thank you very much. I just wanted to share with you something that has happened here during the pandemic. I think that everybody will agree that this pandemic has really changed the way that we look at the world. And despite the fact that, you know, we are all into neuroscience, at least for us, it was very, very clear that our healthcare workers were going to need some extra mental health and cognitive support. So from the rehab department, we created with an artist from a studio elsewhere, the recharge room. So what you have created, this sensory immersion vessel, that pod that you have created, we created different rooms that now they have been deployed through the whole Mount Sinai system, but it's using exactly the same kind of ideas, right? It's a room where you enter and you are immersed in a biophilic design where there is like nature, like the plants that I have in here. I just took them from the room next door. You have all these visuals about either a beach or a mountain or whatever it is that you like. You can activate everything by voice. The lights are dim and the music, it changes with everything that you are seeing. And when we deploy it in the midst of not knowing what was going to happen with the world in general, we did a little bit of a data collection and realized that, well, first of all of our healthcare workers were extremely stressed, despite the big purpose of we're going to do this together, right? That was very nice to see. But they were very, very much stressed for the uncertainty. And it really decreased by 60%. We just published that paper, the level of stress. So now what I am trying to push forward in here is this idea that we need to move this forward to all the buildings. Train station, hospitals, ICU, mothers should be giving birth in areas that where their experience is much more than just interacting with us, but also, you know, having waterfalls coming out everywhere. So I'm super excited about the work that you are doing. I always have been a big fan of yours. I know that we're pressed by time, but I love to meet you and talk about how we can change the face of medicine using video games, taking care of mental health and cognitive issues, and just, you know, like keep moving forward with what you do. We need a pod here, so if, you know, the Hawaiian people, they don't need it, please send it to us, New Yorkers. We really need it. And you know, that's more than a question. It's just, you know, let's move forward into the work that you are doing, because it's really impressive, and
thank you.
We'll be happy to collaborate.
Thank you. I love everything you said. I know we're probably out of our time, but we should follow up, and I hope to get to New York soon. My whole family lives in New York. It's definitely a place that I need to be back to very soon. My family lives in Chelsea, so I will be back soon, and I'd love to come visit. I guess the world is opening up now, so I'd love to see what you built. It sounds really, really amazing. Thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gazzaley. Unfortunately, we have to end. There's so many more questions. I wish we could just stay and talk forever, but thank you so much for coming. Yeah, and we look forward to so many more discussions. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for coming and participating. This was really fun.
Thanks, everyone. Hope to see you soon.